Good evening for those of you that are like our author who are overseas in Scotland, and good afternoon to everyone here in the Denver area and the rest of the US. My name is Adam. I work at Tattered Bookstore, which is Colorado's largest independent bookstore, and we've actually are celebrating our 50th year this year. So thank you to all the readers out there and customers who have supported us for the last half century. Here's to another 50 years. If you're in the area, don't forget that we just reopened our downtown location right next to where the Rockies play baseball in a building called McGregor Square. And we also just opened our kids focused store out in Aurora at Stanley Marketplace. Before I go any further, I do want to mention that there is closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. There should be a black bar that says CC. For anyone who wants it or needs it, just go ahead and click that and closed captioning should pop up. If you're interested in more virtual events, please check out tattercover.com/events. We have another kids/young adult event coming up in a few weeks from now in July with Michelle Ruiz-Kyle to discuss her book, Summer in the City of Roses. So again, if you're interested in more virtual events while we're still having them, please go to tattercover.com/events. And then this afternoon, but again tonight for where she's from, I'm so excited to introduce the author of Generation Misfits, Akemi Dawn Bowman. Akemi, welcome to Tattered Cover, well, virtually at least.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Definitely, and I've been alluding to the fact in my intro that you are not in the Denver area or the U.S. You're currently in Scotland, so you're from the future technically right now.
Yeah, kind
of. We're here to talk about your book. You have a few books out, but this is your first middle grade book, Generation Misfits. Tell listeners and readers what it's about.
So Generation Misfits is it's a story about kids who meet through J-pop. I think we kind of pitched it as a J-pop meets The Breakfast Club. So it's about a girl named Millie who was previously homeschooled and doesn't really have any friends and just desperately wants to go to public school and kind of get a friend group and all that kind of stuff. And she ends up going to a school called Brightside Academy, which is a performing arts school, on the basis that she continues playing flute, which is something that she does not enjoy, but her parents are really pressuring her. And yeah, so things just don't go to plan, and she struggles to make friends and ends up meeting kind of a group of misfits through a shared love of J-pop. So
definitely, and I love books about misfits. I'm a misfit. I've always been a misfit. I was one of those people who I was a jock, but I listened to like indie music and didn't fit in. I didn't dress like a jock, so I didn't fit into either worlds. Were you a misfit growing up then?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it comes from just like social awkwardness. I've always struggled with saying the right thing, and everybody else always seems to know. I don't know what to do in social situations, and I just have no clue. So, yeah.
I don't think any of us have any clue what to do. We're all just faking it.
Right. I feel like I hope that's true.
Yeah. No, I definitely. And like I said, this is not your first book, but it's your first middle grade book, which is for middle grades in elementary school. Yeah. Why switch focus from like young adult teens to a younger population for this book?
It's something I always wanted to do. I think for me, my love of storytelling probably came from when I started reading middle grade books. That was sort of the thing that really was the spark that made me want to write. So I feel like that's like a special time to like discover books and stories and what kind of, draws you, makes you feel connected. So that was always one reason. And I just happened to like meet up with my editor, who kind of was the initial brainchild behind this. And we sort of just talked and grew this idea. And it was kind of just like a happy, I guess, circumstance kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. What books did you enjoy when you were this age, when you were a middle grader? Was there anything that like still stands out that was like your favorite?
Yeah, I read a lot of Goosebumps. That was probably the first. I remember Goosebumps and Babysitter's Little Sister, which I guess a little bit earlier than that. And I think the Saddle Club. I was really into horse books. Like anything, I wasn't allowed to have a pet when I was a kid, so anything that had like an animal on the cover, I was like, I'm sold, I'm there. So that was probably the initial stuff. But I think his Dark Materials, that series was the one that I just fell in love with. It felt like I was in a different world, and it was just magical, and I'll just never forget that reading experience. And I feel like that's something I always like strive to write a book that connects with readers the way that connected for me. So yeah, I think those were the early ones.
For sure. Goosebumps. I've been telling everyone I've been talking to recently is I'm rereading Animorphs because
oh yeah,
It's just the best. It's the most epic series of all time. I know some people think I'm joking, but I'm like, no, I'm not. Trust me, it is really good. But yeah, it's all about connecting with people, right? Like his Dark Materials. For me, it was Chronicles of Narnia. My cousin gave me like his whole set, and like it's just
Yeah.
that connection. It's those worlds. And what I loved about Generation Misfits, I had the chance to read it before we talked, is it's very realistic, obviously, but it still feels like its own unique world, you know. And I guess I just wanted to talk about the character specifically. Did you start with the main character, or did you kind of have ideas for all the other ones first, or how did you build this cast?
Yeah, well, when I spoke with my editor, we talked about a book that was based on a group of misfit kids who meet through J-pop, and that was sort of it. And then I got to kind of run with all my ideas for it, and so I kind of just created these characters who felt very different. I wanted to have people who wouldn't necessarily have met otherwise. They're just in different social circles and all this kind of stuff, and but then they have this like passionate common like love in a fandom essentially that connects them. And because I feel like that can be like really powerful when you meet somebody who has, I know for me it's like Star Wars, like if I meet somebody who loves Star Wars, I'm like instantly like we're best friends. Like and so to have that as this book, especially for kids, you know, this is like 11-year-olds, I think feels like such a big deal at that age. So
Yeah. Are you a fan of J-pop, or is that just something you felt kids could connect over?
I do like J-pop. I feel like I'm more of a fan now that I've written this book because I did a lot of research, which I've forgotten so many of the names too. So if you ask me, I'm going to be terrible at remembering. But yeah, but I had playlists and everything. I'm a really big Blackpink fan as well, which I don't know if that's like traitorous to J-pop fans, but that's because that's K-pop. But I like groups in general. I like music groups, and I love pop music, and yeah.
Yeah, I think for anyone listening out there, you don't have to be a fan of J-pop. I am not a fan of J-pop necessarily. So again, please don't attack me if you are a fan out there. But yeah, like it was just like I could believe it. Like even if I don't know any of the artists or songs or whatever, I get fandom. And that's what I think you did a really great job of coming across. It's like how passionate these kids can be or adults can be about something.
Yeah.
And did you have like they're all very unique, like you said, they're all different people who never would have met except they have this fandom. Do you have a
Yeah.
character who you are most like in this book?
Probably Millie. Millie, because I was also previously homeschooled and I played the flute and didn't enjoy it. And so I think
Yeah.
those two things will draw me. Yeah. So yeah, probably closest to her.
Oh, that's so funny. We have a reader question that I'll ask
Okay.
now. It's where did you get the idea for the book? And you talked about like you were talking with your editor, but in that conversation, why a group of misfits who like J-pop specifically?
I think it is that it's difficult to find friends. At least it was for me at that age, and sort of you're sort of like don't know people, they're all strangers, and you're trying to find, I guess, that kind of common thread that's going to connect you. And sometimes when you have a love for something that's as big as like a fandom or something like that, it's like that instant connection. And I think there's something kind of magical about that, to feel like you've bonded with, you know, with a group of people because you're so passionate about something. So yeah, that was kind of the big thing.
Yeah, and then as you're writing this book, you've written YA books before. Did you have to, I mean, obviously you had to write differently, but how did you have to write differently? How did this book feel different than your previous books?
The most obvious answer is just it's that it was third person past tense, which was I did that on purpose because I thought that will separate, you know, kind of like my brain for getting into a different voice. In hindsight, it was actually very difficult, and the amount of times that I had to keep correcting myself because I was so used to, you know, first person present tense. But I think in the end it worked well for the story, because I think you get to be in Millie's head but like a little bit removed. And so for me, I feel like that was a helpful way to kind of explain how she's feeling and like what's going on around her, in like that sort of bird's eye kind of optics of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And remind me, your YA books, are they similar to Generation Misfits? Are they more fantasy based?
So the first three are contemporary,
Mhm.
and I think they all kind of share a similarity in the sense of found families, like a big theme. It's something that like I don't know, just feels like something I guess I like writing about. It's because I feel like not everybody is born with, you know, the perfect family or the people who I guess, support them or understand them. And so like to have that option that you know that you can still find those people in real life, you know, outside of your own immediate family group, I feel like that's a reassuring feeling maybe for like a lot of people to read that. And like, I don't know, I find it comforting personally. And yeah, so I think there's the connection there. But my most recent YA is based in the afterlife. It's like a fantasy sci-fi mashup, so it's very, very different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that idea of found family that comes through your books. What was your first like group of friends where you felt like this was a family? How did you all connect? Was it Star Wars like you mentioned, or was it something else?
I think, oh, that's really tough. I mean, like originally, like elementary school, if we're going like way back, I think it was Littlest Pet Shop. I think it was the toys. I don't know if you know what
Yeah,
those
I know
are.
what they are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was like a big thing back then. So it was
Yeah.
probably that was like the thing. And yeah, and then back then too, I think we had Jurassic Park came out. There was like, I don't know, there was a lot of things that would come out that was just like a big deal to like everybody. I remember when Power Rangers, that the original Power Rangers, and like that Halloween, everybody was either like the Red Ranger or the Pink Ranger. And that like really bonded people like to have that kind of a shared experience. So yeah. So I think it
Yeah,
always was some kind of media or some kind of show or, you know, yeah.
yeah, and that just goes to show how like powerful media is in a good way. We can talk about the negatives, but in a good way, like
Yeah.
fandom, like you mentioned Star Wars. I know on your website it says like, and you even said it, if we talk about Star Wars, it's like there's that instant connection. You just know,
Yeah.
and that's what's so powerful about it. With this book, it's about found family, about misfits coming together for J-pop. What do you hope readers, both that are 11 and maybe adults like me reading it, what do you want them to really take away from it?
The family thing is a big thing, that just to feel like you're not alone, but also I feel like sometimes people are going through things behind closed doors that maybe you don't always know about or you can't always tell, and that sometimes just being there for the person is like a really, really big deal. You know, not everybody is ready to talk about necessarily what they're going through or like how they're feeling. Sometimes that takes a long time, especially if you're talking about somebody who's 11. I mean, you know, I won't give away spoilers, but you know, there's a character in this who's going through stuff that probably they'll be working through for a very long time.
Mm.
And I think just to have that family at, you know, away from their home life to feel like, you know, somebody's just there for me, not necessarily to talk about what's going on, but just that they're there to take their mind off it. I think that can be like a really important thing. So
Mhm. Yeah, and then one thing like I noticed while reading it, and then again, like just on your website on the book page, it has like content warnings, and
yeah.
we don't need to list them or anything. But did you get pushback from editors or anything for including those things that may seem a little more adult, but 11-year-olds can be dealing with?
No, not really. My editor is Trisha. She's amazing, and she was super supportive in the story that I was trying to tell. And I always try to be very thoughtful and think about things and then speak about it in a way that's not erasing anybody's experience, but also I don't know, trying to fill it with hope too, even if it gets a little bit dark. So no, I didn't get any pushback. I think that there was for like a brief while some maybe questions about like how come these adults didn't act sooner, and I feel like that's always something that I feel like if anybody's been in a situation like that, you probably know that it's not always like that. Like sometimes people don't see what's going on or they don't react, and it's easy to say from an outside perspective like, oh, the adults should go and do something, but in reality that's not always what happens. And this is a story that's about the kids, and so I'm putting it from their perspective and what they're going through. And so yeah.
No, and I think that's like great. I haven't read, like I'm a adult without kids, so I haven't read a lot of middle grade other than Animorphs, I guess, in a long time. And to read something like this, I don't remember ever when I was a kid, maybe there's a few books, but nothing that really like spoke to like issues that maybe my friends were going through, like really difficult things that like they didn't talk about until like 6 years, 7, 10 years later.
Right.
So
Yeah.
reading that was just really like, wow, like I'm so glad that writers like you are allowing these stories to be told, and then editors are, you know, also allowing them to be told and everything. Yeah, no
Thank
real
you.
question there, just a compliment. So thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
an adult for writing this book that I wish
Yeah.
I had like 22 years ago or whatever. Well, because it's a middle grade book, and I know you probably are gonna throughout this. The book came out today, so congratulations.
Thank you.
But I know a lot of whenever we have events with younger audiences, they like to ask these questions. So I'm jumping ahead, assuming these are going to be asked. What's your biggest advice to some 11-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old who wants to write? What advice can you give them?
Oh, I always feel like these are such hard questions because to me, I feel like there's no one way to write. I guess that is my advice, is that, people can give you advice, forever, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the stuff that's going to work for you. I also feel like, every word you write is one word closer to having a finished manuscript, and you can't be a writer unless you put the words down, right? So I feel like even if you have a day where you're just thinking and maybe you write a sentence, that's one more sentence than you had the day before, you know what I mean? And so sometimes writing a book is literally just, it's a string of sentences, isn't it? So yeah, I would say you just have to put the work in, I guess, and keep trying. And for me, it took a lot of books that had to be written and rewritten for me to get to a place that I even got an agent. So it's not the kind of thing where, if you write the first book and you think it's terrible, like, you don't need to give up. That's practice, and you just work on the next thing and keep going until you feel, you've got a book that you're proud of, that you can get an agent for, or whatever way, if that's traditional publishing or self-publishing, however you want to go. Yeah, so I would say that, and take advice with a grain of salt, because it doesn't always work for everybody. So
Yeah. What works best for you when you're writing? Do you need a specific room, a specific time? How do you write?
Yeah, well, I do have two little kids. I've got a 7 and a 5-year-old, so I have to be very flexible. I think I used to have a nice routine, pre-kids that worked very well. I had my snacks and my office and stuff like that. But now it doesn't really work like that. I'll usually have a kid climbing up my head in the background. So yeah, so mine I have to be flexible, but I do like quiet. I prefer quiet, and I don't always get that, but I like I can't listen to music. I know a lot of authors have super cool like playlists while they're writing. I can't do it, so I wish I could, because that sounds nice. Yeah.
With the I like to ask writers who have kids this, who write for kids, do you ever take inspiration from their stories they're telling you, or are they involved in, like, do they seep into your creativity at all?
No, I don't feel, I mean, maybe subconsciously on some level, I think maybe all me, I feel like I'm more influenced, to be honest, like by video games. I feel like that's probably the thing that's like slipping through. But I'm somebody who actually can't really read a lot when I'm writing on something. And I think that's on purpose, because I can't get through a book. I read it, and then my mind is already swaying about like what I need to go work on. And I find that distracting, and it's hard to like really get lost into a book. So I tend to actually not read very much unless it's like graphic novels or something that takes a shorter amount of time. So yeah, so I don't feel like it does, but then, I'm saying that, but who knows really? Like maybe it's, subconsciously there. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm just always interested because, like you said, you would love peace and quiet while you're writing, but with two little kiddos, who knows? Like, they're always there.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you talked about how you always kind of really wanted to delve into middle grade. You've been writing YA for 4 books before this.
Mhm.
Does anything else interest you? You mentioned graphic novels that you like to read. Do you ever see yourself being a part of a team that does that, or are you going to stick to YA in middle grade?
Yeah, I would love to write a graphic novel. I think that would be so much fun. So yeah, that's on the bucket list for sure. I would like to write an adult fantasy at some point. I've had an idea that's been kind of stewing for probably at least 4 years, but I keep having projects that I'm pushing it to the side. But eventually, one day, I will get to it. And yeah, that would be nice.
How
Yeah.
often or how long do projects kind of stew in your mind? Like Generation Misfits, how long were you thinking about it before you actually started writing it?
Not very long. Normally when I'm have an idea, I like to just jump straight into it, and I get really excited. And I feel like the first 10,000 words are always like a lot easier. The first 10,000, the first or the final 10,000, I feel like are the easier parts to write. The middle is work. That's an uphill. So yeah, I think just more recently I've had to push stuff to the side because I have like multiple deadlines. And so now I'm lucky that I get to work and stuff. But it means when I have that new shiny idea, I have to kind of stick it in a drawer and wait. But yeah.
Yeah. With that middle 10,000 or the middle part of a book, why is
Mhm.
it work? Just because you have to, yeah, why is it work?
I think the beginning is like so much fun when you get that idea and you're like, I can't wait to start this, and I'm gonna have all these names and all this stuff. And then you like hit that point where you're like, oh, now I really need to know about plot and character growth and like all the stuff that actually goes into like writing a book. And then you're like, oh, this is all the hard stuff. That's so I think that's why. And I think I always watch my word count, and then I know how much is still left, and I find that sometimes it's a little overwhelming of like how much work there is still to do. So that's when like you have to like really focus, and I guess that determination and stubbornness I guess comes in handy. But yeah, I think that's why I think it, and you get like a distraction for me, like when I'm after the first 10,000 words, I'll get like another idea for something else, and I have to like really ignore it because I think it's just something in my head that's trying to like distract me and be like, work on this other thing instead. It'll be more fun. And yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of writing a book? Is it so characters? You just said like you love creating characters, but is it
Yeah.
dialogue? Is it like really like scenes? What gets you going? What gets you most excited?
The character growth is like a big thing for me because I've always been the kind of person like even the movies I watch, like I'm drawn to stuff that is about the character, and the plot actually can come second for me. That's just my personal taste.
Yeah.
Because if I don't care about the character, I'm not really that bothered about where the plot's going. Like I'm not invested, and I want something that's going to make me feel something. So I'd rather know who this person is and what they want. So that's a big thing for me. I enjoy working on that and to kind of have their arc and stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's probably the big thing. I do like describing feelings, yes, and also like the scenes. I do like I'm very like sensory, so for me it's not just the way something looks but the way it like smells or tastes. I like describing that kind of stuff. I find that very fun. That's kind of like where I get to be like a little bit lyrical or poetic.
Mhm.
And yeah, those are probably my favorite too. I do like coming up with names as well. That's a fun part of it.
Definitely. And then
Yeah.
something I meant to ask earlier and I just forgot. So you mentioned how books were like you when you were a kid, those really like helped connect with people or they got you into different worlds. When did you start writing? Were you writing back then, like as a kid, little stories, or when did you kind of become a writer? Not professionally, just like to yourself.
Yeah, to myself, it was a long time ago. It was probably when I first started writing. I was, like I said, I was obsessed with animals because I couldn't have a
Mhm.
pet. I really wanted a cat, and so I used to have like these books about these cats. I think in my head I thought if I wrote them enough my parents would just give in. It didn't really work. And so it was like one about raising dogs and stuff like that, but I used to fold like construction paper and like staple it, and that was, to me, that was a book. And
Mhm.
but I think the first like serious one, this is so embarrassing and it makes no sense, but it was about some girl who had a horse that lived in her backyard apparently, and an ice cream truck driver stole the horse, and it was about her trying to get the horse back. It makes no sense. Like the plot's out there, but yeah, I remember sitting down for hours and hours working on that. I was probably like 8 or 9 or something like that, and that's when I kind of knew that that's something that I wanted to keep doing, but
Mhm.
hopefully a better book.
And then your first book was published in 2018. Am I correct, or is it before then?
2017 Starfish came out. Yeah.
So you've been a writer in multiple books since then, obviously. So in the past like 4 years, many books. Are
Yeah.
you writing every day? I know you have kids.
Yeah.
Are you? How long does it take to kind of write a rough draft for you?
When I get the time, I try to write every day when I can. I have a bit of, sometimes it's a juggle. So sometimes I'll go a week and I literally can't get time to write. So
Mhm.
then like when I do have that time, then I'm like nonstop. And so yeah, it kind of fluctuates, but I tend to write a first draft in maybe within like a couple months. I want to say, and that changes. So that's not like a strict thing. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. It just depends on the time. This last year and a half has been very difficult, as I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people know. So everything kind of got pushed, and I'm usually the person who's like 3 weeks early to a deadline, and that was not happening. So yeah.
Yeah, and I always ask like questions like that because I want, like kids who are reading your book, they want to write. They just know, there's no science to it, like you said. And then
Yeah.
parents too, if they want to write, they could be inspired by you. Be like, hey, it's okay to skip a week. Like you have,
Yeah.
writing will happen when it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And then you mentioned you don't listen to music, and you mentioned you forget all the J-pop names, but uh, and you mentioned your graphic novels inspire you. What else? Where else do you pull ideas from? Is it just anywhere?
Yeah, well, I do remember one J-pop. I will say there's a group called Fakey, and they're really good. So if anybody's listening, if you look up there, they have a song called Antidote, and I love that song. But yeah, honestly, it's video games. I remember when Ocarina of Time, Zelda, came out when the Nintendo 64 first came out, and that was like that was the most amazing storytelling like in the world. Like the twist at the end, which if anybody's actually not played that, I don't know if there's anybody who hasn't played that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a twist at the end that was just like blew my mind, and that was yeah, so I think stuff like that, to be honest with you, is more likely to inspire me. And sometimes just like building houses on The Sims, for some weird reason, it like makes me feel creative, and I start thinking about stuff while I'm doing stuff that's like I don't know, like an automatic brain thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No, definitely. That's super interesting. I am the type of person who, yeah, like comes up with worlds that don't like. I created a baseball league recently, just with like, it's just interesting to me because it's like I'm never going to write about that, but it just jogs my memory for other projects I could be working on or whatever. The
yeah,
Sims thing is super interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that.
yeah.
My sister's a big
Is she
simmer
cool?
kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an adult now, but when we were kids or teens, she would like never let me play. She's like, "Well, you're gonna ruin it." I was like, "Oh, okay, like class."
Yeah.
Video games are always fun with siblings.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask some questions. The one question was like where you get your ideas, which we just talked about. You mentioned snacks earlier. Like, do you always have a snack when you're eating, or do you try to? And what's your favorite go-to snack for writing?
Yeah, I used to. I like dried mango, and chai lattes are my favorite. That's like
Mhm.
the number one. I think more recently, because I have to sometimes when I do get time to write and I'm writing for like nonstop to try to like make up the time that I've missed, I can't really have snacks because then I start like I'm getting too distracted. I don't know if I get like a sugar rush or something, but I can't really do it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm kind of like minimal on snacks nowadays, but I do like a hot drink or something. That's nice to have.
Yeah, a good chai latte is always nice to
Right.
have.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I would say boba tea, but there isn't a boba place for like, I think the closest one is like Edinburgh. So it's like miles and miles and miles away. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. How have you? I don't know how long you've been in Scotland. How have you adjusted to life from in Scotland? Like you mentioned before, we were talking. There's like sheep on the road. We don't have that. Well, maybe there's somewhere in America. There's sheep. How's
Yeah.
life going for you over there?
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. I moved over like I think it's over 10. I think this is the 10-year. It's just
Oh,
over 10
okay,
years
for a
now.
while.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I've been here a while. But yeah, it was an adjustment at the start just because I'm from Vegas and everything's 24/7. And then I got here and it's like everything closes at like 4 o'clock. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean you're closed at 4?
yeah. Oh,
So
that's so
yeah.
fun. Oh, yeah. And yeah, that's sorry. That I was just thinking that's I'm going to. My father lives in Maine, which is not Scotland, obviously, but it's like Scotland where everything closes at 4. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just made me laugh. So I'm like, we were just talking. And so you recently had a YA book also come out this year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Um, that's 2 books in 1 year. So, and you already mentioned juggling deadlines. I don't want to talk about what you're working on, but are you working on like with specifics, but are you already into the next middle grade or YA book right now?
Yeah, I am. I just wrapped up edits on the sequel to the book that came out this year, The Infinity Course. So those are turned in, which means I need to start drafting the third one. But I'm also working on my next middle grade, which is cool. So I'm waiting on an edit letter for that, and then I'll be able to kind of dive back in because that draft was questionable. I'll be honest, this pandemic was hard.
Yeah, yeah, of
So yeah, but that'll be fun. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on now, and I've got like a couple things that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but hopefully
course.
sometime soon.
With
Yeah.
um with the pandemic, and I haven't really asked many writers this, but I'll ask you, you kind of brought it up. In your contemporary books, are you gonna talk about the pandemic? Are you just gonna skip over 2020 and start writing books
Yeah.
that are set in 2022?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I feel like 2020, I feel like it skipped over me. So I feel like it's only fair to leave it out. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know how to put it in a way that I don't know, doesn't feel like just makes you sad.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
you know what I mean? I watched the show This Is Us and I feel like they handled it well, but I feel like it made sense for that show because it is kind of like, real time. So I feel like, I know, I feel like it's going to have to get acknowledged at some point. I feel like there's going to be no way around it because so many
Yeah.
people have like lost like a year and a half of their lives, not gone to school and all this stuff. So it's like, you know, but I'm not there yet.
Oh, it's interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I have no interest in a book that touches upon it. I mean, if
Yeah.
it comes out, because you're right. Like to me,
Yeah.
what interests me is the characters and the character growth. I always plot is secondary when I'm reading. It's like
Hmm.
who I am. So it's like I don't know if I care about
I know.
reliving. I don't know if I need to.
Right. I guess it depends on like what the lasting. I mean, if we wear masks eternally, I guess it's going to have to be in the book. You know what I mean? But obviously, if things go back to the way it was pre-pandemic, then maybe we can just like skip over it and pretend there was like a time jump or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. And I just want to wrap up with, we talked about books you read when you were a kid, and you mentioned Zelda. Are there any, and I know you said you maybe not read a lot when you're writing, but are there any other books that are similar to Generation Misfits, or other books that just like interest you that you've read recently?
Not middle. I wish there was more middle grade. There's an author named Ashley Herring Blake, who I adore, and I've got all their books, but I haven't actually read them yet because I'm always like behind on my reading pile. But I know they write like really heartfelt middle grade, and I know I'm gonna love them. For YA though, what did I read recently that was a contemporary? Sarah Kuhn has a book that just came out called From Little Tokyo with Love. And that was really good. It was like a modern day kind of fairy tale. And I don't want to spoil too much, but it was set in like Japantown and just had all these like really cool, like, it wasn't fantasy, but it felt very magical. And so I really enjoyed that one. But yeah, other than that, I read a lot of graphic novels at the moment while I'm drafting. There's one called Nimona. Have you read that one?
I have not
Is
read
it
it, but
Noel
I've seen
Stevenson?
it numerous. And so now that you're like the 18th person to recommend it, I guess I
And
should
like,
probably read it.
it's so good. It's so good. It made me laugh so much.
Oh,
So
for sure. Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the last big thing that I read was, it's not necessarily for younger audience, but Paper Girls. I
Oh
don't know,
yeah.
it just blew me away. It's like everything I want in a story. So
Is it? I think I
yeah,
have the first one.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Anyway, well, Akemi, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's your book's publication day, so that's super exciting. You're in Scotland, so you're in the future. Where can we find you on the internet? What's your website? What's Instagram?
My website is akemidawnbowman.com, and my Instagram and Twitter, which I'm not on the same, but they're both the same, is at Akemi Dawn Bowman. So pretty easy to remember.
Super easy. Well, thank you so much, Akemi. Thank you to everyone out there in the internet universe listening. And you can get Generation Misfits at tatteredcover.com, and follow us on all the social media. So everyone, thank you for keeping with virtual events. We will be back in person soon, I promise. But everyone have a great day.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.